Hello and welcome to part 1 of the first episode of the Pioneers Conclave. My name is Dhruv Joshi, and in this podcast, you will see how small instances of your early life shape you as a person. Do check out our social media handles for more details. To get in touch with Mr. Upamanyu Acharya, do check out our YouTube channel, ESL and Skill Hub Jai Hind College. His details are listed in the description box. Not taking more of your time, let's dive straight into the conversation. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Pioneers Conclave. And with us today, as our very first guest, we have Mr. Upamanyu Acharya. He has been the founding president of E-Summit in 2016. He's also the founding president of the case study cohort. He has represented college and our very own country at the HSBC Case Study Competition at Hong Kong. He is the founder of cryptocurrency content company Fine Stuff, which has got 1 million plus page views. And he is currently studying at IIM Ahmedabad. So, welcome, Mr. Upamanyu. We are very happy that you're on board, and we would love to have a conversation with you.
Good to be back. I think Jai Hind College, my alma mater, is always doing some very interesting stuff. And this podcast is the latest one under the flagship of the E-Summit or Entrepreneurship Summit, of course. Great. I'm very excited. So let's get started.
Okay, so the very first thing, as I mentioned in your introduction, from HSBC Case Study Competition, E-Summit, your cryptocurrency startup to IIM Ahmedabad, if you had to describe this entire journey in a word, phrase, or a sentence, how would it be?
Describing this whole thing in one word is not an easy task. So I won't try to do that. But if there's like a phrase or something that students can take back, it would just be like be dedicated, don't give up, all sorts of generic advice, but I think this type of generic motivational advice is important because you have to keep track, keep pace with what you're doing, and keep your end goal in mind. So I guess keep your goals in mind would be that phrase. Another bit of advice sort of related to that is if you can do something that you really like. So, for example, I loved writing, so I tried to convert writing into my hobby. And hobby then became a sort of job because I started a company based around that. So, doing something that you love is a very important thing. You can stay motivated for that with a long time. So, do what you love and love what you do is a very cliche saying, but I think it holds true.
So, Upamanyu, as I rightly said in the introduction, you were the first president of the Entrepreneurship Summit. With us today, we have the current president of eSell and Skill Hub with us on the show, Mr. Siddharth Jalan. And Siddharth, do you want to ask some questions to Upamanyu right now?
One question I had in mind, actually, first, a very warm welcome, Mr. Upamanyu, and thank you for joining us. We're
Thanks.
really delighted to have you on this platform of the Pioneers Conclave, an initiative under outreach for ESL and Skill Hub this year. So, one question I had in mind, and as you correctly spoke about goals and setting goals for yourself, was what was your prime motive of starting the Entrepreneurship Summit?
So when I joined Jai Hind College in 2015, the BMS program had a lot of great things going for it. It was a very flexible course in terms of career outcome. One thing we noticed, or one thing I noticed immediately, was that there was a real lack of industry connect, and we were doing a business program, and we almost never really got to interact with anyone from the industry. At the time, 2015, IIT Bombay's entrepreneurship cell had this huge event every year, their own e-summit, right? And that's what uh, we used to go to almost every year, even in school. I remember going. And all these startups used to win insane prizes, like 10 lakh prizes and everything. And the startups were almost always from IITs. So that got me thinking about why such a flagship business program in a college like Jai Hind College doesn't, and which had a lot of startups at the time, by the way, because even before my batch, there were a lot of alumni who founded very successful startups. They sold their companies for crores. These are BMS alumni. But there was no real startup culture or nothing where they could come and get together and meet each other. And 2015 was the height of the startup boom in India. So even investors were really looking at getting to know some good startups. You can imagine, like, they want to know who the next big Flipkart is. what was happening at the time was non-engineering colleges had almost no exposure, or they didn't really have events that catered towards entrepreneurship or towards a business event. That was the first thing that I wanted to change. So the administration faculty at Jain College and we worked together. So we did that in 2016. We invited almost like everyone who I could reach out to was invited as a speaker. We reached out to uh, Barclays, to Camlin, a lot of big companies like Reliance, and we got a great response. We also saw the response from startups, over 120 startups from across the country in that very first year, with no brand name or anything behind this event. They started participating. And that is what keeps eSummit. I think that's the heart of eSummit, which keeps it alive. And that's why the event has grown so much. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how much it's grown over 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That actually leads me to my next question. It had a great success when it was started in 2016. So being there and attending it up till the very last year, and even this year actually in 2020, uh, I wanted to ask you what your views are on the progress of the eSummit from 2016 to 2020, and how you think it has changed over the years.
Back then, it was very, like, not very, it was a big event, but the scale has just gotten so big right now. Your sponsors are huge conglomerates like SBI and Kotak. Your uh, speakers are international speakers. Your startups come from not just across the country, but across the world. You have registrations, international registrations as well coming in, right? So the DNA has remained the same. It's just the scale that has grown every year. So I remember in the first year when we did that, we didn't. We raised a bit of money, and it was enough to do the event, but it wasn't enough to be lavish about it. So over the last 4 years, the interest in this event has grown, not just externally but internally as well. And that has grown, I think, largely because students are also realizing what is important for their career outcome or their aspirations. So students over the last 4 years have increasingly realized that putting in a few months of effort in ensuring a good e-summit in whatever capacity they can, whether it's like a VP of operations or raising money through sponsors, this sort of exposure is something that only a college can give you. And that is something I would want to uh, sort of send a message to most students here, which is that the college tag that you have can get you a lot of access, and perhaps far more access than once you join the corporate world, because people want to teach students, or they want to help students achieve their goals and their aspirations. By the time you've completed a couple of internships and you have participated in events like this, you have a bit of exposure to how the corporate world runs. And that is supremely important. And that is a differentiator really between someone who has not done any of these things, who has no corporate exposure, and someone who has a great deal of it. It shows when you're doing your final interviews for final placements, and for when you're trying to actually join a career, join an industry, right? So career outcome is one thing. And that's why the event has scaled so much, because all participants realize that it's super important.
Absolutely. I think you said it very correctly that this opens a range of opportunities for us, and I'm personally just really excited to carry this tradition forward. So I think that's it from my side. Dhruv, over to you. Thanks.
Yeah. Upamanyu, I am of a strong belief that personal experience or any kind of experience in life plays an important role. Like there's always one incident that happens and it kind of has an impact on your life. So, what has been that life changing experience you have had?
So I've had a couple of these life-changing experiences. I think eSummit was definitely one of those, starting it in 2016. But I've already spoken about that. So I'll go even further back a little bit. I was selected as head boy of my school way back in 10th standard. So that was a big shock to me, because I was never like a great student. I was never in the student council. The teacher saw something in me, right? Like there's potential in this kid. Let's give him a platform. Let's see what he can do. So I had to lead the student council of 30 students. It was an important role for my personality development, because before that I wasn't really exposed to handling different groups of people. And that's really what a leader is doing when they join a leadership role at a company. It's that different groups have different motivations. How do you get them all together to work towards a common goal? And as a leader, it's your job to not really force all of these different groups to work together, because ultimately you can't force anyone. But it's to ensure that the incentives are aligned in such a way that um, automatically people want to work towards a common goal. That is what helped me. The second part of what helped me in that role was public speaking, speaking to different stakeholders, talk to the principal, talk to the administration. Back then, as a student, see, simply talking to someone who is a hierarchy above you and interacting with them and getting to know them on a personal basis, that itself is a huge exposure. So having that at an early age is something that really helped me. But I realize that the audience who would be listening to this is probably past that level right now. So what can be useful to them? I would say that try to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, because that's really what it boils down to. Uh, and it's always possible, right? Join a club in your college, or join a startup, do an internship, join an NGO for that matter, because the learnings from these will really be the same. The point is to just be in a situation where you're handling different groups, or where you're exposed to different groups and making sure that their incentives align.
Yeah, so we can rightly say that these small things that happen in life, like I mean, something like you're a part of a student council, or you've been given an opportunity to speak about something on stage. These small opportunities would build you as a person and make you a leader. Can we conclude to that?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is absolutely on point. It's the small opportunities that you get, as you rightly said. Taking on these small opportunities and not saying no to them, and being there when these opportunities are presented, that is a great thing that you can do for yourself.
Absolutely. So let's get a little off topic right now, I would say, and we would like to know a little about you. So my next question to you would be, what kind of things do you do when you're, not working, or you're not in that working hours actually? So what are the small things you do? Maybe reading or any kind of hobbies that you have?
So I used to read a lot, and I mean like a lot, but that was a long time ago. Fourth to, let's say, 9, 10 standard, I used to read maybe close to one book in 2, 3 days. It boils down to curiosity. So that's why I used to read. What came after that was again similar, because I was always a curious kid. I wanted to learn, but I sort of strayed away from books and into the realm of video games. And even till today, I have no problem saying that that is my hobby. I love playing games. If there's any game that has come out in the last, any AAA titles that have come out in the last 5 to 10 years, chances are I've probably played it. So that has been something I have enjoyed. I think there are learnings to be gained from both. It's not like you should completely disown video games as a useful endeavor, even though most people think that it's a waste of time. There are things to learn from it. I would suggest that being curious and trying to explore things, whether it's reading the news or even traveling for that matter, it sort of plays into the same ethos of curiosity. Being curious will make you explore things that you didn't know before. And similarly, most people I know in my batch at IIM Ahmedabad are extremely curious people. Now they have different levels of knowledge in different fields and different things.
So being curious is something even I believe in, because I feel that you should, rather than asking what is happening, you should ask why is it happening, is what I believe. And that is something you brought up right now, that being curious is very important in life.